Are women aware of men who have a fetish for pantyhose, especially their feet in pantyhose? I think that most women would figure it out fairly quickly if we had a guy who had a thing for pantyhose, and particularly our feet when wearing them. We're usually trying to figure out a guy's weakness or what turns them on in particular. Are they into our butts, boobs, legs, or something else? Some guys like all of our body parts, while others zero in on one or two aspects they like and tend to fixate on them. I was in grade 9 when a girlfriend classmate who had an older boyfriend in grade 11 clued me into how kinky guys could be. She told me that her boyfriend asked her to always wear pantyhose when they saw each other on dates. It didn't matter if she was only wearing jeans and a t-shirt, as long as she wore nylons. He liked skirts and pantyhose too, of course, but always asked her to not wear shoes when it was possible. When we saw them together in school, she was always barefoot in her stockings. I thought it funny and kind of weird and asked if it was just her boyfriend who was like that. And when she asked him if other guys liked that sort of thing, he said yes. A few of his buddies loved when girls wore pantyhose, and especially when they took their shoes off in class or at home when they were together. It was much later, when I was working as a pretty new flight attendant, that I actually encountered a similar guy who had pretty much the same fetish. I didn't know anything about it until he picked me up at the airport in my car after I'd had a long flight. I used to let him use my car while I was away flying, just as long as he picked me up when I got back. I was really tired and my feet were sore and I didn't feel like driving home. As I got in, after he put my luggage in the hatch, I slipped my heels off and reached behind my seat to put my shoes on the floor in the back seat, reclined my seat, and closed my eyes for a few minutes. I opened my eyes after a few minutes and noticed him checking out my legs, as he often did. Lots of guys like girls' legs, and I often received compliments on mine because they were nicely toned because of all the sports I loved to play. I asked him if he was enjoying the view, reminding him to keep his eyes on the road. He asked if my feet were sore from all the walking I had done all day during the flight, and I nodded. He told me he could help with that if I sat sideways and swung my legs over the console and put my feet in his lap. What girl would say no to that when her feet were hurting and burning? He was pretty good with just the one hand gently massaging them as well as he could, and lightly running his fingers under my soles as a light tickle. When we got back to my place and parked in my underground spot, he hopped out and pulled the trunk release to unload my baggage, while I lingered a moment longer before opening my door. He reached into the back to get my heels, but instead of handing them to me or offering to put them on my tired feet for me, he simply took them with him with my luggage and headed toward the elevator. I hollered at him to bring my shoes back. I didn't want to walk across the garage floor and get my nylons and feet dirty. He left the luggage at the elevator door and came back with my shoes, and I acted like Cinderella, offering him my feet one at a time until my heels were back on and I got out of the car. When we got into the elevator, I stepped out of my heels again while we rode up to the 12th floor where I lived. As we approached the 11th floor, he bent down and scooped my shoes up off the floor. I looked at him with a smile and curious look on my face. I was fine to walk from there in my stockings because I lived in a beautiful building that had really lush wall-to-wall carpeting throughout the hallways. All I had to carry was my purse, and he brought the rest, following me to the door while I got the key out to let us both in. Once we were inside and I had put a few things away and hung my uniform blazer, I asked him if he really expected me to walk across the garage floor in my nylons, or had he even given it thought when he just grabbed my shoes off the back seat floor. He looked at me and grinned sheepishly, and then blurted out that he thought I looked really sexy in my uniform skirt and nylons without my shoes on. I laughed out loud, couldn't help myself. I guess it was kind of embarrassing for him to confess that to me, but it reminded me of that day in grade 9 when my girlfriend first mentioned that her boyfriend found it a turn-on when she wore nylons without any shoes. I had just had the same experience with a completely different guy who had the same fetish for feet in nylons. From that point on, since it was out in the open now, he would make requests like when I was going down to the lobby for the mail to not wear any shoes, so he could come with me and get all hot and bothered watching my stocking feet as I walked down the hallway and got into the elevator. He also told me he loved to see other guys looking at my feet and enjoyed seeing their eyes light up. I guess it is a fairly common thing, guys liking to see girls with no shoes, and especially if they're wearing sheer pantyhose. Who knew? Well, I sure didn't until grade 9 when I was 14, but I was lucky and probably found out sooner than a lot of other girls, even though it was well over a decade later until I had my own experience with such a guy.